We are here. Thank you so much, Lucca Wang, for joining us for this week's Monday Meets. Really appreciate it. Well, welcome.
You're welcome.
Yeah. This is.
I'm happy to be here, and also I pronounce it Wang, but that's okay.
I'm so.
No worries.
Hey,
Mandarin. Mandarin Chinese speaking.
Well, welcome. I'm incredibly excited that you chose to come on. You know, we have specifically been talking to our own agency and staff, and so this is the first time we've kind of branched into chatting with someone from an organization with whom we partner and work with on a regular basis. So I really appreciate your coming out and doing this. What we're doing is basically an informal sort of chat, and if anybody is watching on Facebook Live, you can feel free to go ahead and email us at any time, to leave a comment at any time down below, or email us if you're watching the rebroadcast later. I'll include my email, and I can pass on any messages. So if you've got anything that you'd like to mention during the broadcast, go ahead and put a comment in there. If not, you can send us an email. But we're going to kind of talk about sort of how you got your start in advocacy, Lucca, and your background, and then about the coalition, about how the Willow and the coalition work together, and then a little bit about how it is advocating and working with legislation at a state level. So could you start by kind of just telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, I was born and raised in Lawrence. I don't know if you knew that well.
I think at one point.
Did you know that?
I think you did mention that you're Lawrence.
So I'm back. I'm also a fellow townie here. Born and raised. Lawrence was a great place to grow up. I went to Drake University, which is in Des Moines, Iowa. So I earned a degree in public relations and studio art, and a certificate in leadership in 4 years. So that was in 2011. And then I went to San Francisco for 6 years, and then I came back in 2017, and I've been at KCSDV ever since then. When I was 18 and just starting out, starting to study public relations, I kind of knew, okay, I want to study this and use it for good. So, that's around the kind of time when Fast Food Nation was being written, just kind of things like this. So just thinking about, public information and what information is out there in the public for, public health, so that kind of thing. And so I wanted to use it as a way of, a good increasing well-being for the public.
Right. So you kind of came at it from a public relations angle, not necessarily a social welfare or advocacy angle, but knowing that you wanted to kind of use your powers for good, as it were.
Yes, that's right. And I basically went straight into, I did probably 3 internships for, one was for the Barack Obama campaign, and then the other 2 were for nonprofits. And I started doing agency work for an affordable housing company. So yeah, then, I worked and I did policy in an office in higher education. So I kind of like transferred those skills into, communicating policy and, getting the information that we needed to be organized and help the students. And then I worked for a lot of different nonprofits in San Francisco, including, affordable housing again, actually. And so when I came over to KCSDV, there are some overlaps in terms of helping people who might be more vulnerable in our society or who might need help. So there's always been that kind of social justice angle,
right
there. And obviously, I am a victim, we're in victim advocacy now. So yeah.
Right. Well, so can you kind of talk a little bit about, because I came from, I think we may actually have chatted about this a little bit before. I came from a not a social welfare background as well. I came from a kind of communications and theater background. And so it's been kind of really interesting to kind of chat with people about things they didn't know before about sexual and domestic violence, that have been really important to them or opened their eyes or been kind of life changing or viewpoint changing. So is there anything that's kind of done that for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the two biggest things, so that it's like, so one of the biggest things is to like victim blaming, I guess, is I was reading some of your questions that you kind of sent me before this, and you were saying, you know, what are some of the biggest challenges facing KCSDV right now? And I was like, you know what, that's a really interesting question. And I think that it hasn't changed. Obviously, I know you asked me what has changed me, you know, in my life, and so that is tying into this as well. I think that, you know, something that I have noticed and observed, it hasn't really changed in terms of like the biggest challenge, like, you know, for me, and then in terms of how KCSDV does our work. I think, you know, the victim blaming that's so prevalent in different ways, either it's like directly or indirectly. And sometimes like people don't even realize that they are victim blaming, but they are doing it indirectly. Anytime the victim is being blamed or held responsible or accountable for what's been inflicted upon them that they couldn't control, that's victim blaming. So I just think it's so prevalent. And so now that I'm like so trained in all of this, it's like I can just pick it up in a second.
Yeah.
And so I think that's actually really life-changing, just to be able to be, you know, an expert and really, you know, delve into it. You know, there's a lot of less gray areas than people think. There's no gray areas, but it does kind of get complex just because there's a lot of different systems that, you know, you could look at things through. So if you know you can look at them through the different systems, it's easier kind of to be able to teach that to somebody else. If you could teach it to somebody else, you know it pretty well. So I think I can do that at this point, and that's pretty life-changing to me. You know,
Yeah.
anytime in the future, it'll be that way.
I certainly think that's a really interesting point, because we even frame our conversations around, I think, to some extent, victim blaming. You know, one of the questions that we always get, you know, at an agency level is, well, why? And I get this particularly doing outreach and prevention, is why didn't she just leave him? And it
right. Yeah, and you know, and that's not a question that I was asking before, but it's now that I'm trained on it, it's like I can really dissect why that is victim blaming. So
exactly. And
yeah.
it's like, and the question, it's like, even the question, it's like, you know, why aren't you asking not why didn't she leave him, but why did he think it was okay to beat her up or abuse her or, you know, withhold money or love or children? You know, we frame it in such a way that it's immediately the survivor's fault. And I think that happens. That's sort of that's sort of just one baseline example of what happens on multiple layers and multiple levels. So I'm excited that you've mentioned that, because I think it is a really important, semantics and linguistics, which is both our area. It's such an important part of framing that conversation.
Context is really important.
It is absolutely, and you know, we still again get the sort of, are you a battered women's shelter, which or referred to as a battered women's shelter, which one of the key points I've been talking about, and I think we started roughly around the same time. I started in late 2016.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things is letting everybody know that we serve all survivors, and that domestic violence does happen to folks regardless of gender or gender identity. So that's kind of a constant and ongoing struggle. So let's talk a little bit about then the agency, because a lot of people might not actually know too much about the coalition in terms of what they do what they do and how they assist local agencies.
Yeah, sure. So I pulled up our website. So it is if anybody's interested, it's kcsdv.org. Sorry, I botched that. KCSDV.org. So there's a ton of information. I do manage the website and our social media channels. So that would include Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. We do have YouTube. And do coordinate some of the media relations. And when you're on the website, you can go to hover over about, and then it shows what we do on the right side. So I'm just going to kind of list off some of them, and then we can kind of delve into it. But some of the key things that KCSDV does is we do program support. We accredit those programs. So there's currently 25 direct service providers across the state. KCSDV supports those direct service providers, but usually does not provide direct services as itself, as an organization itself, KCSDV. We give expert advice and opinion. So that can mean like testimony for legislation, sometimes in court, but it can mean also, third parties calling us or partners or member programs asking us questions about, victim services, anything from personnel to, managing the shelter to different systems questions. We provide legal assistance. So we have a legal assistance to victims project where basically any victim can get aid for, their legal services. So we'll kind of like act as the glue between, the contract attorneys or representing them, from KCSDV to help them out financially. There's public information awareness. It's kind of my area. Public policy. So I kind of mentioned that, we are able to provide information and, increase education, for, policy lawmakers and any partners. And then we do a lot of state level collaboration. So I think that's something we don't often talk about is our state level collaboration, but we do a ton of state level collaboration with all the systems, anywhere from, law enforcement, sexual assault nurse examiners, medical professionals, sometimes educators, and sometimes with the local programs who are in the local cities and communities across Kansas as well. It's just like one huge push all together. It makes a big difference. So, but KCSDV is it's a nonprofit organization. It was founded in 1982 in Topeka. And there was a history before that, but that's kind of an incorporation date that we use. So we're 38 years old this year.
Nice.
And so, and like I mentioned, in addition to being, an organization, it's also like a network of direct service providers and providers who are in victim advocacy.
Great. Yeah, and one of the I noticed, I mentioned your backdrop before we actually started the recording. The Capitol Rotunda there, and it looks like, if I'm not mistaken, that's from Advocacy Day, which is one of the programs. Advocacy Day in January, is it, or January or February?
Yeah, this one I believe is from last year in February. Yeah, okay. It's always in February.
Yeah, great. Yeah. Advocacy Day is a chance for all of the agencies to come and join for a day of representation at the Capitol. So that's always a good time. That's a place where I reached out to other agencies and kind of met some folks there, because sometimes we don't get a chance necessarily to talk to each other too much, which is a shame, because everybody's got unique challenges and things that they do differently, and it's kind of good to get around and learn from each other.
Yeah, definitely. It's a good opportunity to meet other victim advocates.
So can we talk? Yeah, can we talk a little bit about that connection? I mean, you've mentioned the different services in terms of like the coordination of agencies and how that sort of works, and what challenges there are to kind of that and the and what you can provide, or what you do provide to individual agencies.
Okay, so the challenges of providing what now?
Oh, the challenges of providing, or just challenges of kind of getting around between agencies and getting people coordinated and that sort of thing. Or what programs have been have been challenging, or areas that you've kind of had challenges with.
Okay, well, yeah, in terms of program support, so there's about 28 people that work at KCSDV. There, we have a finance and administration division, we have a education advocacy and outreach division, then we have legal and policy division, and there's me. So that's kind of how it's kind of laid out, and we all take questions and all contribute to program support. And in terms of, so, well, there's not, I wouldn't really say there's any challenges. It's just, I think all of the local, there's probably not challenges, but nothing comes to mind that's like huge challenge right now in terms of program support. I mean, we just try to support the local programs in the best ways that we can, that you guys might need. So the Willow Domestic Violence Center is an example of, one of those 25 local programs that are in cities and in communities across Kansas that provide services to specific coverage areas.
Right.
And that is on the website. It's kcsdv.org under the Find Help tab. So you can see like a map there, and it has, numbers on the map, and then a listing of the 25 organizations. And any victim or survivor can go to any of those programs. It's just laid out in a way that there's specific coverage areas for each local program. And so KCSDV, I mean, each local program has unique needs because they're in a different, each organization's in a different community, has different levels of support, has different programming maybe. So that might look a little bit different for each one. I guess that's the best way that I can answer that question.
That's great. I think, for example, with the Willow, one area that I know that we've always found some help is in legal assistance, because for most agencies, getting legal representation for survivors is incredibly tricky. We work often with Kansas Legal Services, and they're wonderful, but they are also usually fairly busy. So I know that the coalition provides some resources there for legal representation for survivors who may need that.
Yeah. So and we did, we got our grant to continue that work, and we have 2 people on that team right now that we hired, I think, in the past year. So this year actually. So we're focusing on that project, on this one specifically that we're on right now. We're focusing on non-intimate partner violence, sexual assault. Mm-hmm. So we can take any applications of victims of any victimization. So when we say victimization in the industry, that just means like, there's victimization of domestic violence, stalking, sexual assault. These things do overlap often in the case of intimate partner violence, but sometimes they can be, separate. So for this specific project, we're focusing on non-intimate partner sexual violence. So yeah, any advocate, basically how that would work too is, if anybody doesn't know, and Will, you probably know this, but some of the viewers might not know, is that if somebody has been, raped, for instance, and they need help in representation, about that, they can go to the Willow Domestic Violence Center or the Stalk Care Center that's also in Lawrence. And that victim advocate that's working with them can help them with the application for the legal assistance to victims project. And then basically that application would be turned into KCSDV. It would be reviewed by the LAV team, Legal Assistance to Victims Project team. And then they would either, try to represent them themselves or get a contract attorney, just depending on, capacity and just depending on various things. but that is an option for victims and survivors.
So yeah, it's not that necessarily people, survivors don't approach the coalition directly, but they work with agencies to access services that the coalition has to offer when those services are available, and that's always a great resource. One thing we're always scrambling for is just any resources that we can get. So the coalition does provide that, and I think that's extraordinarily helpful. Let's talk a little bit about like successes of the coalition. I think I'd written a question here. What's a recent success that you'd like to talk about? And it doesn't have to be a huge grandiose one. Sometimes it's the little stories that can make all the difference, but just something that you feel like has really gone right lately.
I feel like there's a lot of things that have gone right lately, so that's good. Well, but I will mention there's a huge thing for us. Like, we got a new website in December 2008. And I understand that's like a year and a half ago, but there's so many, there's so much work that goes into a website. Just, we had to do it in layers.
Right.
So we transferred the former website to our new one and just kind of revamping it, making sure that it's functioning in the way that our current organization, as it is right now, needs it to. So we have like a training component where people register for trainings. We have a back end for member programs where they can log in and get all their resources and information. And then we have the public web pages, which has all of our brochures and all of our topic information and what KCSDV does. And another success is we were able to put together an annual report. So we hadn't done that in a while, and I think that's really good.
Yeah.
And that's under our about section. An annual report, and we worked really hard on it. It looks beautiful, I think.
Oh,
you
nice.
guys can let me know if you don't think so. We're working on the next one, so if you have any feedback.
Absolutely.
But those are two things that I would say are pretty amazing. And I don't know if you had anything to say about those. I have one more though, actually.
I do have to say that I really like the new website, and I feel your pain on that. We revamped ours, and I think in 2017 or early 2018, and the weight it feels once it's all said and done, it lifts off your shoulders is amazing. But it really is it's a much more user friendly, intuitive, and very kind of modern look to it. So it's definitely very nice.
And we recently, this year, we made so that the font, basically we took the ADA, compliant, because for any website you have to be, you have to make it so that anybody of any ability can read it and access it. Mm-hmm. So we could do better maybe in some of our languages, limited language, English proficiency areas. I think that's an area where we could improve. In terms of, but we increased all of the font, we made all the spacing larger, we are making sure that the contrast is high because some people need that contrast. Those things we did this year. We were able to, that's a layer we put on top of it. So
nice.
Happy to do that. Another success I was going to mention is that we are pretty successful in working with partners and legislators on policy. So I think a lot of people would be surprised at some things that are or are not in legislation. But so this past year we worked on 3 major things, and the session was cut short. So we will continue to do that for the future. But if anybody's interested in learning about in the past years what we have passed, you could go to our website, kcsdv.org. and then hover your cursor over learn more, and then click on newsroom. So this would have a lot of different articles, our press releases, any articles that we have in our newsletters, those newsletters are quarterly, so they're coming out 4 times a year. Sometimes there's like 6 to 12 articles in each one and that are about our work. So you can just kind of scroll through, and it does have, last year's and the year before that and the year before that in terms of what things did pass. So
Nice, nice. Yeah, that was actually, you kind of answered the next question I had, which was going to be about, sort of working on a legislative level. So we do continue to the coalition continues to do advocacy and work with legislators on specific state legislation going
We
into
do, yeah, and it's increasing information and awareness, and basically just giving information about, various things. So I'll pull up a specific example on that. But basically, we give our information to them so that to help them be informed about how what they're putting in, like as a bill, is going to impact victims and survivors. So that's a huge thing.
Yeah, I know that it was there was recently, I can't remember if it was last year, the year before, that had there was the law that involved rental agencies and renters' rights for survivors, which helped to prevent evictions and violations because of victimization.
Yes, that was last year, and that was successfully passed. So if there's a domestic violence victim who needs to relocate or break their lease, then they would be able to get a letter either from their victim advocate, just saying, or just let their landlord know. Different landlords might record different things. It probably depend on the landlord. But that is in Kansas law now, that if there's a victim advocate, they are not financially responsible for the end of their lease if they're having to break their lease. And again, the landlord might ask for a letter or something, but those things can be, they can try to keep that more confidential in terms of for victim safety.
So it's so helpful for survivors, since sometimes it's often that fear of where am I going to go, or how am I going to be able to live apart from my abuser is such a big part of that conversation. So that was a really important and really helpful bill to have passed through. So
definitely.
Oh, well, then let's we're closing in towards the end here, but I just got a couple quick.
Okay.
To talk to you about what upcoming new is there anything kind of on the horizon moving forward that the coalition is working on that would be worth talking about?
Yeah, there are 3 things that we're working on, and I wanted to pull it up on the website here in terms of the policy work. Because the session was cut off early, we will continue it for next year. Here it is. So I can mention these 3 bills. And things always change and needs change, but these are things that we have set aside that will continue for next year. So there's one bill that would be, it would basically designate adequate tracking for missing and murdered Indigenous women. So it'd basically be the first step in addressing the issue in Kansas. Now, nationally, they are looking at something similar like that. So it might not be a state level thing. It might be a more national thing by that time. We will see. There's a lot going on, as we all know. So another one would create a process for terminating parental rights of a rapist to a child conceived through rape. So that's a really big one that we'll look at next year. Another one would finally remove the spousal exception to sexual battery from Kansas statutes. So historically, there's been an exception for spouses. So if there's 2 people and they're married and one rapes the other, they cannot, there's not a law to say that no, you can't do that, and that's wrong, that's criminal behavior.
Right.
So Kansas is one of those states, and sometimes there's just these little things that not a little thing, it's a huge thing. Sometimes there's these big things that we find in law that can be updated, and that's a prime example.
Great, great. Well, thank you so much. Towards the end of each interview, I like to give folks a chance to kind of shout out something personal to them. Maybe basically anything that people might enjoy knowing about you that you do outside of your work, or any people that you'd like to mention, or events that upcoming that you'd like to mention.
Yeah, I mean, well, Domestic Violence Awareness Month is in October.
Thank you.
So I think I'm wearing purple today for this interview. So purple is a color that people can wear in October, and notably on October 22nd, which is Wear Purple Day. And basically you wear purple to show solidarity with victims of domestic violence, and also kind of just increase that awareness, create those conversations about what domestic violence is and what help is out there. And obviously, for Douglas County, the help is the Willow Domestic Violence Center. Personally, I have a dog. I know a lot of people love pets and dogs. So my dog Fifi, she just turned 3. So I gave her a little honeycomb chicken treat with some peanut butter on top and a little candle. So
nice. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And yes, I actually got the Domestic Violence Awareness Month toolkit today. And
awesome.
It's fantastic. The posts, the media posts. In fact, a lot of what y'all who are watching the posts that you're going to see over Domestic Violence Awareness Month, I'm gonna use one of those a day, because there was a great collection. So really appreciate that. Really appreciate what you all do at the state level, and making sure that kind of working with legislators and working with other agencies to ensure that we're coordinated in our efforts. If you have any other questions, Lucca, what's the best way if people want to get a hold of you? Do you want to have them email me and I can send it on to you, or email you directly?
Yeah, people can email me directly if you want. My email address at KCSDV, it's lwang@kcsdv.org. Also, people can, if you forget it or misplace it, you can go to the KCSDV website. You can just type in KCSDV in Google search engine, and we'll pop up there. And nice. There's a connect webpage that people can click and submit like a message or an email. So okay. Yeah.
I'll throw both emails at the bottom of the comments here, and then on the YouTube broadcast. So, and I'll send you that so you can put it on your YouTube too. We can
okay.
Channels. But thank you, Lucca Wang, for joining us. I really appreciate it, and look forward to hearing everything that continues to happen. Also, I wanted to give you a plug and give everybody a plug. Early warning on October 18th. We are presenting in conjunction with the Lawrence Public Library an evening with Rachel Louise Snyder, who wrote the book No Visible Bruises, about domestic violence, both from a personal story level, from a case in Colorado, to a national level, and looking at it as a public health threat. So it's going to be a very fascinating little conversation interview. I hope you can join us for that. It's all online kind of conversation with. So
okay.
I'll send
I wrote it down.
Information about it. I'll put information here at the bottom of the screen for anybody who wants to attend that. But thank you so much for.
You're very welcome. I just want to say to everybody that book is phenomenal, and I know I think last year we sent that book out to all the programs because it was just it's an amazing book, and it really gives a good snapshot of domestic violence. So that's incredible you guys are doing that. Thanks for plugging that and letting me know. I have it written down, so I'll try to tune into that.
Really lucky in that we actually read it because Megan read it, and then she made the management team, or had the management team read it. Not made, we all loved it, but she had us read it, and I really liked it and thought we need to figure out how to get her to come and visit it. And it just so happens that the library was chatting with her as well, so we managed to make that happen this year. So
that's really cool. That's really neat.
Chalk it up in a list of good things to happen in 2020.
Definitely.
We all need them. But thank you so much, and we will talk to you soon.
Okay, sounds great. Well, thank you for having me.
Great one. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.